Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales Haven Insights. Today we are joined by Declan Barry, CEO of Export Explorer. Declan, how are you today?
I am great, man. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Sun's shining, so we can't complain. Um,
No.
Obviously, you know yourself, Declan. We've spoke quite a lot. Declan spoke at one of my events as well. Very well received. Declan is just a wealth of knowledge, guys. He knows everything there is to know about international selling. Not blowing smoke up his backside. And basically anything to do with sales, Declan is certainly the man to go to. So Declan, we're just going to crack straight in with this, because
Mhm.
time's limited and I like to keep these nice and short. Okay,
Cool.
so straight in with the first question: how can someone get started in sales?
Um, I don't know about you, Kenny, but I think most people that I've come into, and me myself, most people fall into sales by accident. I would love to say that there was some predetermined role or path that someone would take in coming into a sales role, but usually what happens is they get a big bug for it at some stage. I think by the time I actually had my proper first sales role, I'd probably had about 14 or 15 previous jobs in retail and temp things and Christmas things and all the rest of it, where I was expected to shift some stuff in electronic stores or whatever else. So I think in terms of how people actually get started, I think most of them start in by accident
Yeah,
almost. But the really cool part is it's probably that stage whenever someone decides to actually make it a career.
yeah,
So whenever someone makes that decision that business development or sales, and I probably for more on the language of saying business development,
yeah,
becomes their career, and it's how they want to progress that. And I think that there are things that you can do to try and develop that and increase that. But I think it's more someone gets bitten by the bug whenever what is it, they say you make a plan while life happens.
yeah.
I think it's usually while life is happening that someone decides this is what they're going to do.
Yeah, so you tend to find that you're right. Most people do fall into sales. Um, so once they've sort of decided, okay, I'm going to start selling a product, or maybe they're in
Hmm.
university and they've been working in a call center and they have the bug and they then see other
Hmm.
jobs. 9 times out of 10, they're online. They're looking at account manager jobs and they're looking at business development jobs. What is the sort of the right way to go about achieving that, getting to that sort of stage?
Um, I think well, I remember I've watched some of your previous content on this and on these programs, and a theme that comes up is that whole idea of someone taking this on as a profession and someone who is going to make a long-term commitment to it and invest in themselves. And I think that's it. That really boils down to a few things. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that become really important. One is that I think they need to commit themselves to actually having a process that they use. You know, they're a professional salesperson, so there's going to be some sort of a process that they use to actually do their job. Um, Whenever I was starting out, one of the first things I did was, and again, I happen to have the bookshelf next to me.
Yeah.
Um, I was using books like this, The Jelly Effect, about communications and how to put
Okay.
how to make your communication stick. So when you're doing email outreach and writing letters, how to make it work. So alongside training you were given on the job, that stuff came in. But more recently, I moved into things like spin selling and learning how to do that and practicing that. And that becomes really important, is actually having a methodology that you use. And then that leads on to just that longer term investment in personal development. I mean, if you're an accountant or if you're a solicitor, you have to do your CPD, you have to do your long-term training, you have to continue to sharpen your skills, and not only that, you have to invest in areas which aren't directly associated to your job. Be it management skills, be it leadership skills, be it whatever else that you're doing, it's developing those skills. Is doing that. Then the final thing, which I actually think is the most important thing in terms of when you decide you want to be a professional salesperson or a business development person, is to find the right role models, to find the right people within the organization who you want to be like, who you want to behave like. Find someone who's got really loyal clients. Find someone who, the people. I even remember when you go back to even less complex sales. I remember selling TVs whenever I was a student, and there were people that worked there, and you would have the same customers would come in and they wouldn't deal with anyone else. You know, people who were able to build that level of trust, people who were able to build that level of relationship,
Yeah.
they were the guys, you know. And there's the old expression, which I still think is true in this as it is in anything else, and that's just don't be a dick. You know, you don't be the Swiss Tony, don't be the chancer, the stereotypical person
The
who
sleazy snake oil salesman, typically.
yeah. And to be fair, that's not a that's a stereotype I feel is very unfair. But the problem is that every now and again you come across one that proves the rule. Um, and without going too far down the road of culture and things like that, you know, every now and again people will see that and they'll usually earn a few quid and they'll do quite well and they're quite charismatic, and people will choose to be like that. But you know, that's never a long-term solution. That's never someone who's going to have a long-term career. And it's certainly not someone who's going to move to higher value products and services and higher value commission levels and higher value sales roles. They're certainly not going to want to move into management positions because no one's going to trust them. So that, you know, in terms of, to come back and circle back to the original question about actually, you know, making it that career, the most important thing is that self-investment and personal development. It's making that decision, this is your career, and treating it like a career the same way as an accountant would, the same way as a marketeer would, even with CIM and all their qualifications, and really making that personal investment to be better than you were previously.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and there's a problem in terms of why there's such a high churn of sales professionals in the industry. They come in quite young, they find out quite quickly they don't like talking on the phone, they don't like talking to people, don't like doing meetings, they don't like being in front of people, and then they fall off the radar. Or along with that, they don't actually do the self development piece. They don't go
Mm-hmm.
off and they don't read books and they don't listen to podcasts. They don't go on courses and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third sort of leg that is the business doesn't do any of that either. The business just kind of says, there's a product, here's a bit of training, go and sell it. And
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of left high and dry. So with those sort of three factors coming in, I believe that there's a problem in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
especially with, we have such a young population of salespeople now coming through
Mm-hmm.
the ranks. And again, we spoke about this at the event. Um, but it's a problem whereby people need to actually learn how to learn, I think.
Mm-hmm.
um, there's lots of people don't understand how to learn. If I was to ask you, Declan, about your own personal experience, when you
Mm-hmm.
were coming up, whenever you were in your sales roles, how many mistakes did you make? How many f offs did you get? How many phones did you get slammed? How many doors did you get slammed? Just tell the people what happened.
Are you allowed to say all of them?
Give us two select.
Every mistake it was possible to make, I made. Listen, I mean, here's the thing, right? The problem with sales, and I will answer your question, but you
Yeah.
made a few points there. The main issue with sales is that it can often be an occupation that people fall into um, without really meaning it. And they didn't make an active decision. It was they needed a job, especially when we look at the contact center industry and things like
Yeah.
that, where a lot of people start. They didn't want to be salespeople. They didn't intend to be salespeople. They wanted to do custom. I mean, I remember doing years ago being involved in a project, and it was, you know, inbound versus outbound, and everyone was dying to do inbound because no
Yeah.
one wanted to do outbound. Um, and the reality was, they were the people that you could recruit, and they were the people that were available. Were they the ideal people? No. Were they going to last forever? No. But we accepted that, we did the best we could, and we moved on. And a lot of business models are built on that assumed attrition of, I'm going to lose probably 30% of people every year. As long as we hit these numbers, that's fine. And there's an acceptance around that. My problem with that is that whenever you've got someone in, and as soon as you find they're not built for the role, they shouldn't be in the role.
Yeah.
It's not fair for them. It's not fair for you. You're underperforming in your team, and the reality is you're actually preventing them from going ahead and finding the thing that they actually should be doing with their life. So I would always have tend to be, whenever you find that something just wasn't a good fit, it was time to move on really quickly. And I think that's an uncomfortable thing that a lot of people don't need to talk about or don't like to talk about. But That's important. In terms of issues that I had when I was coming up, and the first thing that I had was real overconfidence, real ridiculous, especially whenever I was working in financial services, and I would have been doing mixture of personal lines insurance, and then I moved towards the corporate side. And the issue was I would have taken on stupid targets because I had a genuine belief that I could do them.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself over promising, under delivering, and then you're making reasons whenever your performance was actually really good, but you were kind of making promises that you just couldn't deliver based on arrogance, especially if you were one of the stronger salespeople in the team. So I think there's a massive issue there about a skill in terms of just having proper self-awareness, knowing what you're capable of, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And I think whenever you're younger, you're happy to overlook that in order to get that bit of attention or maybe more push towards a promotion you wanted or whatever. And sometimes that's a very dangerous thing to do. And I would have been guilty in that of that when I was younger. Probably the second thing in terms of mistakes would have been learning very, very early about authenticity with customers. We would have had a few chancers in the team whenever I was younger, working with a particular financial services organization. Was this covered? Of course it was. Was that covered? Of course. The answer is yes. What's your question?
Yeah.
And sometimes you could pick up those habits because you never saw the consequences. Now, I was lucky that I kind of was never really comfortable with it, so I never really picked up that practice. But what I did see with other people was whenever there were problems, there were huge problems,
Yeah.
serious issues, and that was before we were in the world of compliance and things like that.
Mhm.
So I think that's the two things. One is that developing that authenticity and honesty with customers, and knowing that's okay. It's okay to say you can't do something because you might still be able to put a deal out. And the second bit is being very honest with yourself and having self-awareness about your own capabilities and what you can do. And if you read anything like Simon Sinek's material around um, around millennials, and I don't really buy into the whole millennial thing. I think every generation are assholes in their own way. But there's a lot more research going into the current one. He would say that they're built to have confidence and stand up for themselves and say, yeah, I know what I'm doing, when the reality is they haven't got a clue and they're just as scared as you are. So I think that's something that we need to protect against.
Yeah. I think you hit the point there in terms of being overconfident and maybe also over ambitious. You can
Hmm.
be all of that, but you can have none of the skill set to match that.
Hmm.
So if you don't have the
Hmm.
skill set to match the ambition, that's where the problem comes in. One of the other things that you've mentioned there is the honesty. The turning point for me, I was working for a large telecoms corporation, was selling like mad. It was a new TV solution that they were selling it like mad here in Northern Ireland. And then I ended up going over to work for them in England, and I was on the other side of the retention side, and I was actually
Hmm.
getting to see the customers that I had sold to that were cancelling a year later or trying to cancel. My job was to stop them from cancelling. So in a roundabout way, karma came back to bite me in the ass. Because
Hmm.
I was overconfident sales guy. I was 18, 19, and I was telling them anything I could to get the sale. Because all I seen was the money. And whenever I went over to England to actually come back and see all of this, I was disgusted with myself.
Hmm.
And that was a turning point. Not many people in the profession will go through something like that. They may
Hmm.
sell something and then it'll go tits up, and the customer will come into the company and it's just all hell will break loose. But for me, I was actually able to see and track what my
Hmm.
pure sales acumen had brought upon this customer. So
Yeah.
fortunately for me, I was able to see that and I was able to catch on within 2 years. Right, this is wrong. Don't do this. Improve yourself. Learn. Be better. Many young salespeople don't do that. They get
Hmm.
caught, they get stung, and then they're out the door or they become a number of the high churn. So, yeah, Declan, I think some fantastic points there. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. We're going to move
Hmm.
on and we're going to lean on a little bit of your experience and something that you are passionate about
Hmm.
is the international selling side of things. So,
Hmm.
as we know, Declan, with the current lockdown, things are a bit mad, but
Hmm.
technology is still here and it's helping businesses to thrive, and we can still connect with people all around the world. So, from that point, where does a business start when they're trying to sell internationally?
The number one sin that most um, companies commit whenever they're starting to look abroad is that they're unprepared. That sounds really harsh, but a lot of times whenever there's failure to launch and these sort of things, it's because they didn't really know what they were getting into in the first place. Um, I'm a big believer in research.
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in investing time, effort, and energy in understanding what it is you're getting into in the marketplace. And I also think that there has to be a real commitment throughout the entire organization to exploring that. It can't just be, someone on the directorship has a real feeling we could do pretty well in China.
Hmm.
Um, Let him go off and do his thing. We'll find out what happens. That's destined to fail because there isn't a proper buy-in and commitment for it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, on that one, and to try and avoid that preparedness, I mean, I think there are a lot of different things that are involved. I mean, the first one is getting that key understanding of what is actually involved
Hmm.
whenever you are going to export for the first time. And there are some markets that are particularly friendly. I mean, in Northern Ireland, for example, um, we have very close relationships with the Netherlands and Germany in particular because they're very friendly markets to Northern Ireland exporters. I'm very happy within our business. We're going to be part of supporting Invest Northern Ireland's efforts in helping Indigenous companies to sell into the Benelux region into Germany in the upcoming year. Um, but they're very friendly markets, and there's a lot of cultural similarities once you can get over the language barrier. But the reality is we're so blessed to speak English that we get away with absolute murder in terms of language capability, and that's not as big an issue as a lot of people like to make the excuse to think it is.
Okay.
But we also need to look at things like how do you need bodies in the market? Are you actually going to have to hire someone and put them out there? You can't do this thing remotely. You can't come and visit someone once a year and expect them to be a loyal customer. So you've got to be able to do it. Your account management and service stuff, diplomatic skills, understanding the cultural differences between there and here, and not being offended when you go to the Netherlands and someone says your product is boring. It's
Yeah.
just the way they speak. It's not. They're not being rude. They're not insulting your parentage. They're just saying they think your product's boring, and that's acceptable in the way they speak. And there's other simple stuff that you do at home that people don't do when they're selling internationally. So I mean, I know you understand the brand process and understand the whole experience of working out who your customers are, what they like, what their personality types are, um, how they like to buy, who's involved in the sales process, how many layers are there, how many stakeholders are involved. Does it have to go through a CFO? Does it have to come out there? You understand that there's a sales process and catering to that. People don't look at any of that when they go abroad. They just assume it's going to be exactly the same as it is at home. So that's all part of the portfolio that you need to have put together before you do anything. There are projects, and I'm involved in a project at the moment to try and stream that and make that as easy as possible.
Yeah.
But it still has to be done, and that research project and giving people those initial 3 or 4 steps is probably 80% of the work I carry out on an annual basis. And you'll find that what comes after that, people will understand just what it takes to execute. And not as many people as you think actually go ahead and execute, because when they see what's actually involved, they tend not to make that investment.
Okay. And what would be is the sort of main challenges then? Sort of trying to sell internationally. So you give us, okay, this is how we start to sell. What are the
Mm-hmm.
challenges in doing this?
I actually don't believe there are as many international challenges as people like to think there
Okay.
are. Listen, they're the obvious ones, okay, and I don't go into a lot of detail in them because
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant,
Okay.
okay, so I don't even you know, I'll always make referrals for this, but you always have legal issues, you have shipping issues, you have import export issues, you have tax issues, you have VAT issues, you have all sorts of stuff, right? So that's the administrative side of it, which is its own beast. And I would point everyone towards their accountant or their lawyer for that. To be honest, that's the bit that probably scares people the most.
Yeah.
That's the bit which is that people find it very nervous, and sometimes they underestimate the cost associated with that, the amount of time and effort and energy that needs to do that. The other thing which I hear all the time, which frankly in today's world, with the exception of China, I call bullshit on, is language issues. I feel that if you're dealing in continental Europe, you're dealing in North America, you're dealing in even most of Africa, you're going to find most organizations that are international will speak pretty good English throughout the organization. And while culturally you should probably learn some of the local language so you can go and visit your client and offer to buy them a beer and start to build relationships with their team, and that doesn't excuse us from learning the language, it certainly doesn't rule us out of doing business. So it's about maybe making a gesture, but you don't have to be fluent. Potentially in Asia, you may have to have that lag. If you've got a Mandarin speaker within your team, you're at a big advantage at the moment.
100%, yeah.
And that is a big issue. But from doing business with most of the Western world, it's really about the confidence in your product, understanding that there's actually a market there for you, and being just as aggressive to secure that market as you are at home. And most of the time when I speak to customers, whenever they talk about going and dealing internationally, it's like they're setting up a whole other division.
Yeah.
It's not. You're opening up a new channel,
Uh-huh.
and your existing team and resources should be able to handle it. So when you ask what the challenges are, I'm not ignoring things like language. I'm not ignoring things like culture, but in the Western world, they aren't the huge barrier that a lot of people said they were, or a lot of people like to think that they are. However, you do have to have a very clear idea of some of the legal and accounting aspects of exporting.
Okay, okay, perfect. So obviously from that point of view, you've got essentially the operations, what I would call the operations of selling
Mhm.
internationally in place. Is there any particular methodology for selling internationally? I mean, what I mean by that is, does Germany have a different way of selling? Do they prefer challenger sales, or does Australia, do they prefer consultative sales, or is it generally quite the same around the world?
I think that's a huge question.
Yeah, yeah.
To be honest, people are people, so you will still meet individuals no matter where you do business.
Hmm.
So those individuals may, you could, if I was to talk in broad stereotypes, you may find that if you were moving further east,
Hmm.
and you were moving towards Germany, and then you were maybe looking at Russia and countries there, they're probably a little bit more aggressive in their negotiating styles. In North America, they'll also be very direct about the sales process, and that's more a cultural thing for us. We just, especially perhaps Irish companies in particular, are probably used to sitting down and having a half-hour conversation and talking about everything apart from business.
Yeah.
And then for the last 10 minutes, and just as you're walking out the door, shaking hands on the deal. Whereas you might find in other parts of the world, they'll want to get straight to it. They'll maybe spend 10 minutes of small talk, but then they'll want to get the business. There's a fantastic lady who's based in London called Annette Kramer, and she's a real thought leader on lots of stuff. But I met with her a couple of years ago, and we were trying to work together, and it never happened. And one thing she said to me was, "See, the thing with you Irish guys is you never get to the money. You always talk around the money."
Right,
And
okay.
and that was a big learning for me, because now whenever I'm dealing with people, particularly from the East Coast of the US, I'll start with, this is what the deal looks like,
Hmm.
but we need to talk around the components. So
Yeah.
they'll know that the deal's there, they'll know that the money's there, but we've got to talk around the components. So, and that was excellent for that, and that was a big learning for me personally. But you can't, people are people everywhere. You'll find some people who want to get into an argument and then they'll send you an email saying, thanks, that was a brilliant conversation, let's do a deal. Or else you'll find people who are very quiet and they'll smile all the way through the meeting and you'll think you'll have a fabulous meeting and then
Yeah.
you'll get an email afterwards saying, sorry, I don't have budget.
Yeah.
But they were just too polite to tell you in the meeting.
Yeah.
So the same thing happens all around the world. And I think that's actually part of the big learning
Hmm.
is people need to know that you've got the same types of people all around the world. And if you can handle them here, you can handle them anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And the whole purpose of asking that question as well, Declan, was there's a lot of people out there, whether it's business owners or sales professionals, who want to sell internationally because the world has become a smaller place due to technology.
Hmm.
So we can reach these other places now. We can do
Hmm.
a Zoom call, Skype call, a phone call, whatever it may be, and we can connect with people all over the world. But there's a lot of people out there, like you say, will still sell the same way that we sell here. Um, Prospect, meeting, coffee, all the fluffy stuff, but never ever talk about the money,
Hmm.
never ever get to the deal. So I think that will help a lot of people who's probably listened to this. So thanks very much
Hmm.
for that, Declan. Moving on, Declan, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the current situation.
Hmm.
Obviously, we know COVID-19 has become a real pain in the backside for businesses.
Hmm.
As much as it's terrible and what's happening in the world, it has stopped business in its tracks for a lot of companies. So, what can companies do to manage sales teams during a difficult time like this?
Yeah, and it is interesting, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about this over the last couple of weeks. Um, if I start outside the business, first of all,
Yep.
the most important thing for any client-facing organization, and that is any sales team, is a client-facing organization, is to put the customer first and foremost. So that's the part that's still, before and after COVID-19, or let's say, BC, before COVID, everything is the customer was there, the customer paid everyone's
Yeah.
wages, the customer paid everyone's bonuses. So, the customer has to be given preeminence here. So, we want their feedback. We want to know what their concerns are. If they're having cash flow issues, we want to know where they stand, because you need to know, as a salesperson, as an organization, you need to know, do you know what, this customer could go quiet on me, and we're not going to find out what's happening until they buy or don't buy, or maybe go to someone else. But we've ignored them, and in their time of need, they don't want to be ignored. Maybe they do want salespeople to ignore them, but who knows? But either way, we need that open line of communication from the customer, to know exactly what our situation is. The key skill in all of this, from a salesperson's point of view and from a sales management point of view, which I think is the gist of what we're getting at here,
Yep.
is empathy. Everyone needs to know and be able to put yourself in the shoes of everyone within the process. I mean, if I am for example, an enterprise sales software person selling a SaaS product, and I'm trying to sell it into an SME, and we've been talking and we've looked at our implementation and we've looked at, how we get it done, and we've looked at payment. Now all of a sudden we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the CFO of that organization and of the economic buyer in that organization, to say, well, can they actually do that right now? Are they, does it make sense for me trying to continue to close this deal, because they may or may not be able to do it? Or else maybe do you need to be more creative with the commercials? What about if we change the payment? What if we front load it for a year? What if we, backload it, so as you're getting your first year free of charge and you're paying it for others? So you've got to be more creative with the deal. There's a brilliant book here actually, which I have on that, and it's not actually about sales or business. It's that one there. It's called
Barrister.
the Secret Barrister,
Okay.
and the subtitle of it is this stories of the law and how it's broken. And that's not me inviting people to break the law, but what it is talking about is creativity. So it's creativity in the deals, creativity into when you're looking at a particular situation in a particular way. How do you look at it with enough creativity that you can create a solution, but it's completely empathetic to the customer's needs. It's not about you trying to hit your number. It's them and trying to find the solution which gives them what they want.
Hmm.
The other thing is that I would move on to after that is, and I've had experience of this in my own career, is internal communications. The
Okay.
internal comms are super important here, because that's how you're going to protect your culture. That's, all the good things that you built up, that all of the good habits, the attitude, the little funny intricacies of your business that no one else would understand apart from your team, they all need to be protected, because especially when people are working remotely and working from home, it's very easy for a lot of that to be erased. So you want to try and protect that as much as possible. And that then is connected to your motivation and things like your targets. So, I mean, I would argue at this point that there needs to be a complete redrawing for at least 3 quarters
Massive, yeah.
of targets, and your metrics, to change them to things that are more team based,
Yeah.
and lighter on the individual side. And the other thing about this, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, is that that process should be treated with compassion. This is one of these very few situations where we're actually talking about a once in a lifetime event, which no one else has experienced before. And no harm if you're a sales manager and everyone's struggling, and you're going to write off, assuming the company can afford it, and making those assumptions, that if you're going to strike off people's bonuses for being 75% rather than 80% against target in the current environment, no harm, you're a dick. And you just shouldn't be treating your people like that. And I've been in that situation before, whereby I've I've personally been in the situation whereby we hit 90% of the target in crushingly difficult circumstances, and there was no compassion on the awarding side. And all that does is, all these people who are still working their ass off for your business in difficult circumstances just feel like the company doesn't care,
Yeah.
doesn't appreciate the circumstances that they're in, and isn't going to communicate with them about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been in that situation. And when I was with that employer, whenever that happened, that was the day my interest in doing anything above and beyond for that individual switched off.
Yeah.
I left. I mean, literally, I probably left that organization mentally that very day.
Yeah.
And if it was my team and I had done that to them, I would expect them to do the same,
Yeah.
especially if you've previously invested in building a good culture and things like that.
Totally
And then
agree.
that's the final thing.
On that point, Declan, sorry, on that point,
Go on.
that's very, very vital. Because I've had conversations with sales leaders, and they have said that the targets are going to be increased to the hilt. Targets are going to go through the roof, and they're expecting their salespeople to come in to drive, 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 drive. And I've asked,
Hmm.
okay, how are you going to reward that effort? Because you're asking them to go totally above and beyond their
Hmm.
job, given the current climate. So how are you going to reward them? Oh, they're just going to get their same bonus, same whatever. It's like you're in for a really, really tough time, So I completely concur
Really,
with what you're saying there,
really
Declan.
tough time. I mean, there's the thing. My wife's father says you can't take trousers off a bare arse. And it's a very simple term, but it couldn't be more true in this organization.
Yeah.
You've got customers who haven't had revenue in 3 months,
Mhm.
and you've got your own salespeople that can't get things across the line because there's a massive amount of uncertainty in the market. So if you're able to get a team that's doing any business whatsoever, they should be getting significant praise. And even if your business is in a position to bonus them financially, and that's fine, I understand. There may not be cash flow to financially reward people, but you need to acknowledge that they're working in very difficult circumstances, and they need to be it, it could be a beer and pizza, it could
Yeah.
be and a card, it could be a box of frigging cupcakes getting delivered to their house if they're working remotely. Doesn't matter what it is. You need, as a sales leader and as a manager, you need to appreciate that these people are working to try and deliver for you. And especially at the moment, they're probably doing it with their 2-year-old and their 5-year-old running about in the background behind them. And they've, limited stuff in the fridge because they haven't been to the shop yet this week, and all these other things that are going on at the moment. So no harm if there's any organization out there and that's their attitude. do you know what? They'll be there for staff turnover whenever that comes in, and
Yeah.
and I know some people will say that that's quite a soft way of looking at it, but the reality is, we're in a, especially when we come out of this, a lot of people have been put on furlough. A lot of people have been put on, a lot of people have been redundant. I know
Mm-hmm.
one organization of 500 people that put 150 on furlough and laid 250 off. So those people are now looking for new jobs. So it's not an employer's market anymore. It's going to be what am I looking for? It's going to be a selector's market now,
Yeah.
where the recruit is going to choose the company that they want to work for whenever this is all over, and all these people are going to drastically have to rebuild their sales teams again quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So people are going to remember who treated them well and who didn't, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see people who have been laid off not go back to where they were before because they weren't happy before. And that's going to be massive. So, and that comes back to the final thing I was going to say on that,
Yeah.
and that's values. You really have to believe in your values. And this is the time when we're going to find out whether your values are actually genuine
Yeah.
or whether they're just that thing that you put up on the wall that everyone has to turn and look at, like it's some sort of religious diktat once a day. If your values are there, your people will stick with you, but you've got to do that. And it doesn't have to be financial, but if you've managed to get a sales team that's even achieving 50% of their targets in this market, you're doing bloody well. And I've been talking to, for personal reasons, I've been talking to estate agents and I've been talking to various people the last couple of weeks, and they're just praying for this to be over. They're just praying for this to be over because they've got to earn some commission.
Yeah.
And but they're also extremely grateful that the organization they work for has the cash flow
Yeah.
to keep their jobs for them while this is going on. So I just think the most important word in all of this is compassion. Compassionate to your customers, compassionate to your staff, and compassionate to yourself as well. I mean, there will be significant requirement for people in senior posts, either at the C-suite or in the senior management levels, to really take care of themselves after this, because this has been extremely stressful, psychologically difficult, emotionally difficult, and they're going to have to really um, take care of themselves and repair themselves after this. Because if you just carry it into the next thing, this is burnout territory, this is stress territory, and this is how people are going to find their lives being very difficult. And that's just my perspective on this. I know a lot of people will go down the Glengarry, Glen Ross. It takes big brass balls to sell and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is my profession. This is my job, and I like it.
Yeah.
And I would still like it to be my profession in 20 years' time. And I would still like to be alive and not have had a heart attack by then.
Yeah.
So I think you can have a great career in sales. I think you can treat people with respect. And I think you don't have to be a dick. And I think that's the real reason for my approach, particularly when I've spoken to people about how to address their teams post COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion is the number one aspect.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you very, very much for sharing that with us, Declan. Great insights on where we are during this difficult time, and we do have to look after ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are stuck in the
Mm-hmm.
home who haven't had this much time in the home before. Like literally, they've probably spent most of their life out working, and now they're
Yeah.
stuck at home, looking at themselves in the mirror, probably hating themselves, probably not knowing who they are. So a lot of these people, it's literally once you have to stare yourself in the mirror at a difficult time like this, you really realize who you are. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I would add on to that, Declan, I would say take note of who you are, take note of what you've done, take note of what you've achieved and what you're actually capable of, and
Mm-hmm.
try and improve upon that. If you don't like something
Mm-hmm.
about yourself, if you don't like something about how you sell, if you don't like something about the way or the product that you sell or the industry that you're in, make the effort to change it now as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a good time to push the restart button. So, yep, listen, great stuff, Declan. Want to move
Mm-hmm.
on, just stick with the COVID-19 theme. In terms
Okay.
of sales, so how do you
Yeah.
see account sales changing post COVID-19 once we do finally come out of the back of this?
Um, I think a really interesting thing has happened, and that is that, and I'm not going to go down too far down the stereotype that a lot of people are talking about now about this whole we're working remotely now, we're working from home. therefore we're not going to use offices anymore, and all that sort of stuff. Because there's a happy medium in there somewhere where probably companies will not look down their nose as much, probably at request to work from home, and people who perform better will probably be rewarded for that and given that facility. Um, but the post-COVID thing has made a couple of things really interesting. One is travel. I mean, in a previous life, I traveled an awful lot,
Yeah,
and I couldn't imagine myself existing in that lifestyle post where we are now.
yeah,
Certainly not in the short term, certainly not in the next 6 to 9 months. I mean, pre Christmas, I won't be excited about getting on a pressurized tube sharing air with 300 strangers.
yeah,
Um, I certainly wouldn't have been on that Aer Lingus plane, which was full to the brims of people. I can understand why people have to travel sometimes, but I wouldn't have been excited at this case in point about getting on that plane being as busy as it was. And I think the other thing about it is there's a natural progression of, right, okay, and even in my business, I'll happily get on a plane and fly 4,000 miles to see a customer because it's important, and there's no problem with that. Um, but I think what we'll find is people will travel less, and I think some things that we had beforehand where people weren't comfortable with video technology. I
yeah,
still think some people just weren't comfortable getting on a camera and and presenting themselves for meetings or things like that. And I think we've all been forced to. Now we've got pensioners using Zoom and Skype and all these things that we never probably would have before because
yeah,
they were dying to see their grandkids. So they're using these new technologies. So I think what we'll find now is that we'll have a lot, probably a lot more regular contact with our customers, but we'll have them like this. It will be a 20-minute, tap to see how are things going, is everything all right. There'll be a lot more face to face, but digitally. And I think as well there'll be what we might find is we may find less of a focus in the short term on conferences and events and things like that. I think they'll take a lot of time to recover. There's a website which I would use for European conferences, and of the 4,500 that were scheduled, 2,800 have been cancelled or rescheduled to next year on that one. And again, this isn't about whether it's safe. This is about the perception.
yeah,
So, it will be, while it might be perfectly safe in 6 months' time to go to a conference hall, to go to the XL in London, and there to be 4,000 people there, that could be perfectly safe.
yeah,
But I still think people are going to be nervous and they're going to have a face mask on and they might be wearing rubber gloves. And in that environment, do you really want to run a conference? Do you want to, will people start to see conferences as a pain, something you've got to prepare for?
yeah,
Well, apart from the normal preparation you would do, from a safety perspective, having to prepare for. So
yeah,
that long story short, I think that we'll find that the post-COVID thing will be much more about developing personal relationships. I think there'll be much more conversations like this. I think that they will be more focused on quality and less transactional. Um, and I think it'll be an interesting period of time. But really, who knows? It's going to be, it's like all these things. Sometimes I write reports and I love doing them. It's really interesting, but the world can change on a sixpence and everything. I wrote several pieces in the 3 weeks running up to St. Patrick's Day,
hmm,
and they're not worth pulp now.
yeah,
So I mean, the world changes. So it'll be really interesting to see. But I do think this medium that we're on now will become a much bigger part of what we do.
yeah. So from that perspective, um, Declan, you've been doing this for a while. You are speaking
Mhm.
with international companies, um, across the water in America and the States and whatnot. So this medium for you is probably a little bit more natural,
Mhm.
in terms of what you're doing. The rest of the world is catching up. I use Zoom quite regularly as well, so it's
Mhm.
nothing new to me. But the rest of the world is catching up. Um, how do you think the whole sales methodology around this is going to be framed? Have you thought about, okay, how are people going to sell? How are people going to, get that introduction? How are people going to get this meeting? Do the same principles still apply, do you think?
I think a lot of the same principles will still apply. I mean, we said this before. I remember whenever we were doing your event, Kenny, and one of the points that was made about social media and digital and how that had revolutionized and changed the world at the time was it made the first 80 meters of the 100-meter race really easy,
Yeah.
right? And that was I can identify who the economic buyer is within an organization. I can identify their line manager, probably the people who work for them. Um, if I that's on LinkedIn, and then if I choose to jump over to Twitter, I can probably find out some personal what sports they like, and I can probably find out if they've got a family.
Mhm.
And then if I'm being really nosy, I can jump over to Facebook and I can find out some of their political opinions and stuff like that. I can get whatever information I need about most people from a salesperson's perspective very, very easy, and
Yeah.
I can get company information very easy. That's all fine.
Mhm.
The bit that matters and the bit that doesn't change is developing the relationship. So they've people buy from people, they've got to like you, they've got to trust you, they've got to see you. And yes, this isn't the same as going for dinner and shaking hands and having a laugh and maybe a glass of wine too many. You know, that this isn't the same as that. However, it's not a kick in the ass away,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that and given that we have limited options with where we are, I think this is better. I mean, because you would previously have made that phone call anyway.
Mhm.
You would previously have done that the telesales, and I think this is better than a phone call.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Agree.
100 times better than a phone call
Yeah.
in terms of trying to build a relationship with someone. So I think that's how it will be, and maybe we find people might get more creative in terms of how they get people's attention and all the rest of it. But if you look at the modern sales funnel and how you put it together, that first 80 to 90% will be the same. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
The real question will be how quickly can I build a relationship with someone using this medium
Correct.
rather than getting on a plane or getting in the car and driving to a meeting. And this is for this is for we don't know how long this period of time is.
Mhm.
You know, we don't know how long. You know, I would say certainly between now and Christmas, I think this will probably be the standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
But you know, there are social animals. You and I are both social animals, so we're going to want to get out, get a cup of coffee with people. You know, that will all
Completely.
start to trickle back in sooner rather than later. The only thing that might happen is that we're going to have a massive increase in the cost of flights because we have fewer airlines with fewer resources and fewer planes. Um, we're going to have a big increase in the cost of travel. We have enjoyed not having to travel over the last period of time. And our customers have probably had a lot of meetings where people didn't have to come to see them. So that's going to be the difference is what's the can I be as effective in negotiating? Can I be as effective in persuading? Can I be as effective in spin selling or whatever it is that I'm trying to do on this medium versus face to face when I can't, you know, when I can see body language and I can, you know, read the room and do all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the real question. And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm hoping that we can still get stuff done because of the collective spirit. I'm not the only person choosing to do this. We're all in the same boat. So I'm hoping that that collective spirit will allow it to happen.
Yeah, I think there's a mutual understanding between business people that this is how business is going to be done. So people are a bit more accepting of it. One of the other things is qualification. I think that qualification is going to become more important now because in order to have a call like this, you have to qualify someone quicker,
Hmm.
more efficiently, and much better. So to get to this stage, you have to qualify much quicker, um, and you have to have that qualification process down. I've spoken about that before with yourself, Declan, and I know
Hmm.
that's one of the areas that you're keen on. And I would say that qualification around getting a Zoom call or a web conference or online conference meeting is going to be vital. One of the other things that I've sort of been looking at, and it's a little bit out there, but people are picking up the phone to make a cold call. They find a
Hmm.
number, they pick the phone up, and they go and speak to the person. Essentially, what you can do on different mediums like Skype or I'm not too sure of Zoom, you can find someone's details online on a website. Sometimes they have the Skype number on there. Sometimes they have the
Hmm.
Skype login. You could People could potentially start cold calling on this
Hmm.
medium as well. people could drop a cold call onto instant messenger. Hey, seen your details on blah blah blah, this is what we're doing. Or people might try and randomly video call
Mm-hmm.
people. You know, we don't know where things are going. One of the scenes that I laugh at in Back to the Future, I can't remember which one it was, but Marty McFly's busy getting fired through video call. The screen drops
Mm-hmm.
down and he gets fired by this Asian guy. I presume the factory's in China or
Mm-hmm.
something, and he gets fired. You know, there's not a phone in sight. You know, there's nobody's picking the phone up. And then the fax, I remember the fax goes everywhere all around the house that you've been
Mm-hmm.
fired, you know. So what I would envisage is happening is that the telephone will still always be there, but this is just another step in the process. You will have to pick the telephone up to qualify
Mm-hmm.
someone, and then once you qualify someone, you will then go on to the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, well, this is just about comfort. I wouldn't be. I would look very unfavorably at this point of someone who randomly zoomed or Skyped me. Given given that especially because we're in the situation we're in now, I can't guarantee that I've had a shave or even comb my hair that day. So I'm not sure I want to be getting, you know, or it could be sitting with a 2-year-old hanging off my
Yeah.
shoulder or
But
whatever.
but
I
if
don't.
you think about it,
You know.
if you get a cold call, you could be doing
Mhm.
any of that. You could be doing any of that.
I could be that's true, but there is something different about the nature of video.
Yeah.
That whenever the a FaceTime call comes through, I'm more likely to go off than I am to actually just answer.
Yeah.
But you're right in an extent that this will move to a new normal.
Mhm.
This technology will become a new normal, and its use will be there. And there will be some people. Every communication and every methodology in marketing ever has always done extremely well until marketers spoiled it.
Yeah.
That's the undeniable truth of sales and marketing, is that we find something that works and it's cool and it's innovative, and then everyone jumps on it until the point where it's saturated and everyone's pissed off and hates it. And that's, and the general public don't like it anymore. That's why, cookies were great until they got creepy.
Yeah.
Telesales were okay until some asshole was ringing you every night at 5 o'clock in the evening. That's when it wasn't customer service anymore. It was a costman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens is sales and marketing people will find something that works and then do it to death. So the thing will be, what will they do with this technology, and what will they do? And that's where I hope, again, to go back to what we previously said about compassion,
Yeah.
is that I hope that salespeople and that marketers will understand a lot of people are going through very difficult conditions, and companies are going through difficult periods. So we don't want some smartass coming on with something that they think is clever to try and spin us into buying something. Everything is going to have to be collaborative. Everything is going to have to be for the best interest of the customer. And I think you'll find that those people who are aggressive as we come out of this are going to have very short shrift from people, because you can't take charges off of our hours. We don't have any money. We don't have the resource to give. And that's where, again, going back to the creativity point,
Yeah.
they may well still need your product. They may well still need your service, but we're going to have to come up with a creative way to put the deal together. Otherwise, we either don't have the capital, the cash flow, or the resources to make it happen. So again, this is where I think, and I'm spending a lot of time we're working with Indigenous clients on this, is how do we actually start to put deals together where the commercials make sense for you and the customer. So you might not get all of your money up front, which you would love because you're under financial pressure, but your customer doesn't have the money to give you. So what about if we can sell your product? You're going to get the money in 9 months, and then you can go to the bank with your invoices showing that the goods have been sold, and you're going to have the cash in 9 months, and then see if the bank will provide you with the finance to do that.
Yeah.
It's this sort of creativity that companies are going to need to survive, especially over the next couple of months. So that's where I am, and again, I completely get what you're saying about the technology and how it's used.
Yeah.
I still think that 90% of the pipeline will be as it's always been. It will be who uses this, and there will be some people who come on this who just aren't good at it.
Yeah.
There's some people who try to use video who it just doesn't suit them. The phone suits them better
Yeah.
than the video or whatever. and that's going to be individual choice. And I know a lot of customers who don't do this. I know a lot of clients who don't do this, business people who won't do Zoom calls. You can ring me on the phone. I don't know why we were doing a conference call before, which was perfectly fine. Why all of a sudden do you have to look at me?
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily, again, this is the whole hysteria of we're not going to work in offices anymore and we're all going to be on video, and we're going to have chips in our head. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a slower, it's going to be a slow boil of a happy medium somewhere here. And I hope that marketers and salespeople can find a way to use this tech in a respectful and compassionate way, because that's what people need
Yeah.
right now.
100%. And I think the point there you made, Declan, to sum that up, we all need a win-win. You know,
Hmm.
we all need to be in the win-win position. What works for your company and what works for your company, and how can we both win? So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very, very much for that, Declan. Tell us a little bit more, Declan, about what you're doing at the minute, where people
Hmm.
can find you, and the types of companies that you're maybe looking to speak to at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not a difficult person to find. You'll find me on most social media platforms. Primarily, it's easiest to find me on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Um, my main business, Export Explorer, I deal with government agencies and I deal with companies who are exporting for the first time, or those who already export but maybe we're looking at a new market. And I'm the authorized trade representative for the UK and Ireland, for the state of Pennsylvania, and for the state of Delaware. So I represent their companies in the UK and Ireland as well. So really, I'm looking to talk to anyone in that business. I'm looking to talk to anyone who is interested in any aspect of the sales management process, are going through troubles or times where they need to try and find a way of working with creativity to try and boost their sales with limited resources. And anyone who's looking to do any work in North America. So we do that. My other business is called Agile Growth Systems, and we're only launching it this month.
Brilliant.
And that's going to be kind of a plug and play digital toolkit for companies. So,
Okay.
once you've got a new startup or a new product and you want to test it in a new market, we will have an automated 12-week launch and testing program to
Mhm.
see how your product performs against your chosen target market in a different jurisdiction. So that's something I'm really excited about. That's new technology, that's innovation, that's a new way of going about it using new kind of sales methodology. We
Okay.
don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to have a lot of fun finding out. So yeah, simplest way to get me is on LinkedIn and Declan Barry, and yeah, I'm really happy to have any conversation with anyone who's trying to run their business and get through these times.
Brilliant. Declan, as always, mate, it's an absolute pleasure to get speaking with you. Lots of value, lots of knowledge that we've captured. So thank you very, very much.